So I've always had an interest in the history of a pirate's way of life. Growing up, our family had a cabin cruiser boat, and on weekends, on one of the largest recreational lakes in the U.S., Lake Lanier, we used to go stay out on the boat all weekend. There's numerous islands on this lake. We would find an island, a nice private beach, anchor out, and would camp out and cook out of the boat on the land all weekend long. In the mornings, usually Saturday and Sunday mornings, my dad and my brother and I, we would walk around these islands and we would do what we called at the time treasure hunting, because various things, items would wash up on the banks of these islands out on this lake. It was a tremendous amount of fun, and that's kind of what initially spiked my interest in the history of pirates and their way of living, how they lived, what their lives were like. So occasionally I'll pick up a book of interest that is about historical and real character from history and try to dive into what life was like as a private, or also known as a privateer or a buccaneer. And believe it or not, at one point in time, piracy, as we call it today, was legal. And these individuals were called privateers. They were issued what was called letters of marque, or authorizations, letters of authorization, commissions, and would legally authorize these individuals to go to other countries, territories, colonies, and to plunder, pillage, take the resources from that other country's territory and bring it back to their territory. It was a legal activity. It was authorized. Now, a lot of times, eventually that became illegal. And sometimes what would happen is these letters of marque or authorization would be issued. These privateers would go out on a mission, and during the mission, while it's in progress, before they ever return, sometimes those letters of marque would be overturned by a king or a prime minister, and they wouldn't even find out that they were conducting illegal activities until they got back to their home base. So it was just a lot of different policy changing at the time. But again, I'm reading a book right now on, it's called The Pirate King, The Incredible Story of the Real Captain Morgan. And yes, it's the Captain Morgan from the famous rum brand. And this was a real individual and rose and had all legal authorization for all of his activities, and eventually became to be the lieutenant governor of Jamaica, which was second in power at the time, and was also at one point the admiral or the commander-in-chief of all of their militias there on that island. Port Royal was their main base at Jamaica. And another element of my interest is human physiology, diets, what people's physiques look like, and the diets that correlate with those physiques. And it's well known that pirates were extremely active, adventurous individuals, and they were usually in tip-top shape for the most part until when they got really old and retired. Sometimes that would fall off. But this particular pirate, Captain Morgan, I've got a quote here out of this book. At the age of 30, Morgan was tanned and muscular. And we often wonder what pirates ate. Some of the movies like to have a variety of foods in the captain's quarters shown. But I've got some historical data here for you. And basically, when they were in preparations for an expedition, a journey, the first order of business was food preparations. That was the absolute first order of business. And bear in mind, they didn't have portable propane grills. They didn't have microwaves on these ships. I mean, they had to be very careful if they were going to have any type of fire on board. And here's some more quotes out of this book. The first order of business was food supplies. And in short, this means meat. For they eat nothing else on their voyages unless they capture other foodstuffs from the Spaniards. And by the way, Captain Morgan was affiliated with the English. So a lot of times they would go on expeditions against the Spanish and or French, if that would be the case. It says this meat was usually pork, or else it would be turtle meat. Quite often, the buccaneers on their voyages would plunder the pens where the Spaniards would keep thousands of heads of tame hogs. And by the way, the Spanish imported hogs from Europe, by the way. It said the Spaniards would keep thousands of heads of tame hogs. If they needed to hunt themselves, the buccaneers would employ a hunter of their own nationality who has a pack of hounds, letting him have whatever share of the catch they think fit. And the individual that was making the records at this time tells us that often some of the buccaneers would accompany the hunting party to ensure that any meat caught was properly salted and smoked, while the rest of the men ensured that the ship was ready to put to sea. Once all the meat had been salted and smoked, it was then stacked in the hold along with other provisions. The buccaneers had 2 meals a day of this meat, consisting of only one course. The fat is skimmed off the cauldron and put into little calabashes for dipping the meat in, writes this particular individual. And often it tastes better than the food on a gentleman's table. So basically the fat would sort of boil off the meat, and it would sort of be in a liquid-like form, and they would literally dip the meat in it. It sounds quite good. I'm sure that if they had access to beef or other types of meat, they'd probably prefer that. It was just that in the Caribbean, other parts of southern Mexico, Central America, and the north side of South American continent, and all the various islands, that pork was just the most prevalent form and supply of meat that they had available. So this is just what they went for. Now, did they have fruits and wines and other things? Yes, if they were able to acquire those in their raids, they would absolutely get those things. So comment down below, what information do you have on the diets of pirates, privateers, buccaneers? What have you read? It's just an area of interest to me that I read from time to time. So tap the thumbs up icon, the bell icon, subscribe to the channel, share this video. Have a good day.